Welcome everyone to our Lenten Labyrinth Exploration. This is our second week of our time together. And as we take a moment to look at the Chartres Cathedral Labyrinth, let us begin a slightly different way than last week. And I would like to, in just a moment, share the chant that I have shared each week. And the choir recorded it this weekend so beautifully. And so I'd like to share the first verse of that. And then I'd like to offer any sharing from the previous week, not just last Wednesday, but anything that has come up since then. And this will be a brief sharing. If you don't want to share, you don't have to. Or if you want to put a word in the chat, but please feel free to just unmute yourself. And if you have an experience, some sharing that you would like to do, we'll invite that at that time. So let's come to the Chartres Labyrinth pattern. And as you see, this is our pattern, and we're going to delve into it quite heavily tonight. And as you take a look at it, just take a few minutes. We'll take about 1 minute, and just see what comes out at you. And we won't share just right now, but just take a moment to meditate on what you see, and then we'll have a moment of sharing about that. All right. As we move into this exploration of the Chartres pattern, is there anything that jumps out at you that you would like to share? Just unmute and call it out.
Yeah, hi. To me, when I look at it in the center, it's almost like it's a ripple effect in water.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
I let
You
my
don't have to play. Go ahead, Kara.
I was gonna say I let my eyes glaze over a little bit this time, and it looked more like a tunnel, almost like a three-dimensional this time. With the is it a flower, I guess, and or the pattern and
Right. Yeah.
further away, and the other part closer to me.
Mm-hmm.
Reminds me of a microphone in the middle with sound waves going out.
Mm-hmm.
I see a tree in the middle.
I see from the outside all gathering together and holding one another, closeness coming to the center of maybe peace. And I don't know why the word glory comes to my mind. I have no idea why.
It's a good word.
Is it good?
It's a good sharing. Thank you.
Does intestines sound like a gross thing?
Well, they're a necessary part of life, aren't they?
Kind of just looks like it.
I've thought the same thing.
Thank you.
And Hal said a gear is what he sees.
That's good.
I see hills and valleys.
Ooh, almost like terracing in some ways.
Well, as we consider what the Chartres pattern is and how we talk about this sacred geometry, let's look at some pictures of nature. He has various things here that you can see from the top left. There really is this symmetry of this succulent plant. There's a center, and then there is this expansion, a widening as it goes out. You can see on the lower left, this is some sort of sea creature, but you see this middle where it sort of draws you in, but then there's a circular pattern going out. We're guessing what this is, and for some people this makes you go ooh eek, but we know that this is a natural pattern as well, even though this is animal. Here's another beautiful pattern. And then of course you think about the shell of a snail. There is this beautiful symmetry to it from its center to its outside. And so we also have that in the labyrinth. There is this sacred geometry. And I love what these two labyrinth gurus have said about it. And I'll read them. Through proportions, placement, and position of stone, wood, and mortar using complementary systems of numbers, angles, and design, the mind can find rest, comfort, and harmony. So with that in mind, look back now at this picture and think of what of these brings you comfort, what sort of calms the mind. We know that when we walk out into the forest, we see the natural stone, we see the beauty of the trees and the leaves. There's a symmetry of trees. There's a symmetry of, even in the messiness of the leaves, they seem to create some sort of pattern. And it does calm us to have that experience. And then Robert Lawler says, everything is in proportion to itself. And this is so important as we start talking about the labyrinth. So we go from incredible beauty of nature to this very architectural drawing that just demonstrates how numerically perfect that the labyrinth is. And we could spend a whole weekend delving into this one slide. But what I'd like for you to take out of this is that there is incredible geometry that went into creating this labyrinth. You can see up, and I'll use my pointer here, that the width of it here is 12.895. This is in meters. And so the square that's created from this, if you were to fill in where the round spots are, it's perfect by creating the square over on top. Taking into account the rosette, each side on each rosette is the same all the way around. And then all of these points, they're making this reference that from the center until each point outside has a specific number of a measurement that when you recreate a labyrinth such as is over in New Harmony, which is almost as identical to this labyrinth as humanly possible, these are the people that created this measuring and took it to New Harmony to make that labyrinth. So there is a sacred geometry in that when you enter, it does allow the mind to ease. It creates this feeling of calm because it is perfectly designed. And so as we begin to think even more about the labyrinth as a spiritual tool, the design and the background and the years of labor that went into it is really quite amazing. And then I want to show you what happens when we don't follow these sort of patterns that were created by the labyrinth. We talked last week about the sharp pattern being a left-handed pattern. And if you see here, this is a sharp pattern that someone has drawn, but look where it starts. we go right first. So what have they done? They've actually reversed it. I don't know if it was intentional, but this is really not a chart pattern. So we can't, it is inspired because it is the pattern overlaid, but it feels very different to walk in and go to the right, because then look at what happens when you enter the center. Normally you would enter the center over, you would be coming in this way. Here you're entering in a very different way. So it all feels different. And as many times as I've walked labyrinths, when I went and walked this, it was very obvious to me that it was different. It does not mean that you cannot find some experience here, but it is not the same proportions and geometry. This is another labyrinth, and this one is here in town. And I'm going to move to the next one because I want you to see. Here is the entrance. It is left-handed. However, look at, even though we turn left, look at this line that goes all the way in. It goes on the left, and then this is the path after you followed all the path, and you enter here. Look at our sharp pattern. Our sharp pattern enters here, but then the path as it enters into the rosette is exactly in the center, not over to the side of the center. This is very important. So in the geometry of the labyrinth, it was created so that when you enter the rosette in the center, you are truly in the middle as you step out of it, not over to the side. It makes a difference. So what are the parts of the Sharp Labyrinth as in my little promo video, which I enjoyed preparing this week? We talk about 11 circuits. The circuits are what each line, the path is. So if we count them from anyway, but I'll count from inside to out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's what it means by an 11 circuit pattern. As we saw last week, some other labyrinths consider the 11th the center, but not in our classical or in the Chartres pattern, which is, you might also hear the Chartres pattern referred to as the medieval labyrinth, because Chartres Cathedral was completed in 1220. So it was begun in 1145. There was a fire, and then there was a rebuilding, and it was in its second rebuilding. And that's when we think the labyrinth was completed. It is not 100% sure. Linear versus non-linear. This simply means that whether you know where you are or not by how the pattern is. So last week someone talked about the fact that there are 4 quadrants or parts to it. So here's 1, here's 2, 3, and 4. In a linear labyrinth, you would probably walk in and maybe come here, fill all this in, go to the second quadrant, walk through all the second quadrant. A non-linear, such as the Chartres pattern, you walk in, you turn left, you come around, and all of a sudden, by the third turn, you are in the second quadrant. You're back in the first. You come around and you are in the second, and all of a sudden you're in the third and the fourth. So it's meant to allow you to let go of the need to know where you are. So nonlinear is actually a wonderful tool for us in walking the labyrinth and finding a deeper meaning. The path simply is what we walk versus the field, which is where we don't walk. So in this picture, the white space is the path and the black is the field. And I made it black or very dark gray rather than purple, which you will often see the path in the field in purple, which is associated with royalty, but also it's a very powerful color in labyrinth work, and you will see it quite a bit. The labors. There are 10 labors in the chart pattern. There are 10 complete ones. The labors are this double-headed axe symbol here, and they just connect the path in these places. I have found in walking that I often will step off and stand on the labors. In this most recent century, in the 20th century, the double-headed axe became a very powerful symbol of feminism, and some women's groups have used it as part of their symbol of power. The lunations are these cusps and foils, they're called. These are the ridges on the edge of the labyrinth. And anyone want to take a stab at the root word of lunations? You can unmute and call it out. Somebody's got an inkling, I know you
Light?
do.
The moon.
The moon, lunar.
Oh, of course.
Right. So there are 28 and a quarter lunations in each quadrant. So that makes 4 of them. So what happens every 28 and a quarter or half days that has to do with the lunar? It's the cycle of the moon, and there was a thought that this could be a way to track Easter. Maybe they put a candle and moved it around, help with tracking the seasons. But there was certainly a lot of astrology and knowing how we can track the phases of the moon and keep track with the labyrinth. And as we know, we often use the labyrinth around big changes, and I talked about the summer solstice, and so it would be an interesting connection. The center, we've talked about, we're going to talk a little bit more in just a moment. This is called the Rosette, and it is where we land when we come at the end of the path. The petals are each of these. There are 6 of these petals. If you look at the front of the Chartres Cathedral, look at the rose window. Most Notre Dame cathedrals, as this is a Notre Dame cathedral, it's just in Chartres, but they do exist all over France. The rosette is there in the center. Here's a closer picture, and you can see it has more than 6, but there are lots of little rosettes. Here's the inside picture of the center window. To the sacred geometry, where this rose window is on that wall, they measured, and if they laid down the wall on to the floor of the cathedral, the rose window lines up with the center of the middle of the labyrinth. So there was an incredible amount of thought put into the placement of the labyrinth in the building, how it lines up, what it represents. The rose windows often represent Mary, and there are many correlations that can be made to the importance of Mary in Christianity. This was a Catholic cathedral into Catholicism, but then the union of Mary and Jesus comes together in this overlay of the rose window into Mary came down, Jesus is on earth. Lots of connections. Again, this is something that we could spend hours or days delving into more and more. Here you do see the Chartres pattern in purple. It's really quite striking and beautiful. I just wanted to show you on this pattern the lunations, labors, the petals. Rosette is inclusive of the petals, and then the entrance at the path. Another example of how we can use the labyrinth and discover more about so many things. I just have picture after picture of how people have taken the labyrinth, made application of either astrology or history, Christology, into how important and how much more than what I'm giving you exists in this pattern. Before I go on, that's so much information. I just want to step back and check in. What questions, what observations, what thoughts might you have?
Well, I have one. I bought before you offered a bamboo labyrinth chart,
Hmm.
but there are only 7 labors,
The 7 circuits.
7
7
circuits.
circuits. So, yeah, and so this is not a bad thing. So and thank you for bringing that up. You can have the shark pattern. Hold that up again, Susan. If you all take a moment, can we highlight? Let me see if I can highlight her for just a moment.
Maybe lift it up a little.
It's how do I hit spotlight? There we go. Yes, lower it just a little bit. So you see that even that pattern though still follows the sharp pattern. There are just fewer circuits. So you often will see in the sharp pattern, raise it up just a little bit higher, and you see where my pointer is. Here's your entrance. It's a left-handed, and then you go up and around, and it's just missing some of the repetitive patterns within its own quadrant. But it is a sharp pattern. Thank you, Susan. So those are good labyrinths to have. You have a wonderful experience, and they're very thoughtfully created. Everybody that got one from me was a 7 circuit, and it's a good for its size, especially. Other thoughts, questions?
Robert, did you mention this? What are the dots that
The
are
little
around?
divots in there, I don't know. I think that they are decorative. I've not seen those, don't exist on the original pattern, so
Okay.
I don't know. I think that they just put them in there thinking that they were decorative.
Okay.
Because you can get those patterns online now and easily make them out of the materials that you want. Other questions before we move on?
Robert, I thought that Susan's labyrinth looked right-handed. Why did I think that?
It may have been just because of it may just have been the
Image.
way image was reversed. But when I'm seeing it, it's left-handed.
Okay.
Yeah, it's left-handed.
All right, so we're going to go back. The other labyrinth that you most commonly see is the classical pattern. And this is the one that I actually own a canvas of, and I do adore it. Let's count this should be a 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is 7 circuits, which is more common because of the space limitations that we have. So here you're seeing the 7 circuit classical labyrinth. And what do you notice right away about this labyrinth that's different from the other 2 that I've shared?
Right.
It's a right-handed. Oh, good students. Very good students. Yes, this is a right-handed labyrinth. And I just used this one because Lars Hallett, who's a fantastic designer, he is an architect and then stepped away from the architecture practice and really designs labyrinths full-time. It's just amazing. I met him at Labyrinth Summer School 2 years ago. So you can see in this one, this is the line on this one is continuous. So the path is continuous, the line is continuous, because here the line ends here, and if you follow it around, it just keeps going and going and going. Well, you have an end here too, but there's just this continuous pattern going on. And there is a center. It's a small center, so it's not like the shark where it's a labyrinth. This is my canvas that I own. This was made by the Labyrinth Society of Danville, Kentucky. And when they got their outdoor labyrinth, I was fortunate enough to be able to purchase this from them. This is at Bardstown Road Presbyterian, where I gave a walk a couple of years ago. I learned very quickly that putting candles on a labyrinth, even though these are electronic candles and they don't spill wax, because we learned about that a long time ago, but the line is so small that they get kicked no matter what I do. So now I don't put them in the middle. I put them here in the middle, in the center. I put them around the edge, but I don't put them on the line anymore because it gets people get worried about it, even though they're 99-cent Dollar Tree candles. So tonight we're going to walk the labyrinth with the 4 R's, but let's remind you of the 3 R's, because you can always walk very simply. So last week we talked about release, receiving in the center, and returning. And just a note about this is maybe these are pebbles, but this could have been done in the ball field chalk temporarily. Someone drew a pattern and made it quite meaningful in this beautiful space. And maybe they're going to do something more permanent, maybe not. But you can create a labyrinth anywhere. I keep scoping out next to the church where we're going to do ours. So in the fourfold path, or the 4 R's, we stop and we remember. And Lauren Artris writes in her book that as you gather your thoughts, preparing to begin your walk, remember you are blessed. All that we have, all that we are, is a blessing from the divine. I'm going to read those words again as we enter our time of labyrinth walk tonight. But know that that moment before you start your walk is important, not more important, but as important as what we experience in the walk itself. As you walk from the opening to the center is releasing. We're letting go. In the middle, we receive. That is your moment to simply receive the blessings of the divine, receive what is good. And then as you return, that was our other R word. This word is resolve. It begins when you leave the center and return on the same path. You return as rebirth. So we start playing with the R's, right? The rebirth or the rejuvenation in your return, your resolve. So we try to use these R words as ways to really invoke meaningful ways to experience. I share a lot of things that are, we can go so much deeper with, but there's also the wonderful work from the Hebrew scriptures on the wisdom walkways, and this one's via positiva. The releasing is via negativa. I love that, negativa, thinking of letting go of what we don't need. The creative spirit via creativa, and via transformativa. Resolve. We are resolved that we can transform. This would be a wonderful long study or several week study to use these words in the scriptures. So as we walk tonight, I'm going to invite you to think about these four. Go back, pull them up. Remembering, releasing, receiving, and resolve. Resolve as you return. Let me see if I have fixed my audio problem before we walk. Are you able to hear that music? No.
No, I can't hear it.
So sorry. Okay. Well, we will walk, and I will share some things as I can. I will continue to work on this. I might be able to pull some music up for us. Let's take about 10 minutes tonight and walk, and I will share a reading at the beginning, and we'll walk for the rest of that time, and then I'll end that time with a prayer for letting go. So let us begin our walk, and hopefully I might be able to take a moment to fix my audio issues. So let us begin now, and at the end of our 10 minutes of walking, I'll call us back together. As you are gathering your thoughts, preparing to begin your walk, remember you are blessed. All that we have, all that we are is a blessing from the divine. As we near the end of our walk tonight, I remind you of the fourth R in our fourfold walk, which is resolve. You have returned from the center and you've stepped back into your life. Even if it's just a few minutes of this walk, in nearly an hour of our time together tonight. But what will you take back with you? What have you left? What do you need to return? Our sharing tonight is from a wonderful book by Melanie Beattie, The Language of Letting Go. Let us hear the poem on letting go. Stop trying so hard to control things. It is not our job to control people, outcomes, circumstances, life. Maybe in the past we couldn't trust and let things happen, but we can now. The way life is unfolding is good. Let it unfold. Stop trying so hard to do better, be more. Who we are and the way we do things is good enough for today. Who we were and the way we did things yesterday was good enough for that day. Ease up on ourselves. Let go. Stop trying so hard. Let's take an intentional few more seconds together to be quiet together. And then I'm going to close this with a prayer. Before I do that, next week we are going to walk with intention. I will review a few of the things we did tonight, but mostly we're going to deal with how do we walk in this more via transformativa, which is a transformative way of being. So we will walk multiple segments. We will stop in, as a community, journal, offer for sharing, and sharing is never required, but we can also share, remember, about our experience of journaling without sharing content, which is just in some ways even more powerful. And then we'll walk again with some more intention on healing. Our Lenten, for those that are not watching our services on Sunday that are in other communities right now, our Lenten services are all focused around healing. So I'll be sharing, if I get the music figured out, I'll be sharing some of that music. But even if we don't, I'll be sharing some words and guidance around healing, some more prayers from Melanie Beattie and others. Let's take about 20 seconds of silence together. You're welcome to look at each other's faces, close your eyes, be wherever you need to be for this short time, and then I will close this with prayer. I will say Amen, and then we'll just depart. You're welcome to depart with a wave, whatever is good for you, but know that after the Amen, we'll be done for this time together. I do want to thank you for this beautiful gathering of spirit, even through the internet and through Zoom. I feel the power of what you all are sharing. I see your faces. I feel you in a way that is really miraculous, and I want to acknowledge and thank you for that. It is a great gift. Let us take a moment of quiet together. Let us pray. O Lord, support us all the day long, until the shadows lengthen and the evening comes, and the busy world is hushed, and the fever of life is over, and our work is done. Then in thy mercy grant us a safe lodging and a holy rest, and peace at the last. Amen.